Welcome everyone. Today we have a comedy horror movie from 2022 titled The Menu. Spoilers ahead. The film opens with Margot, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Tyler, Nicholas Hoult, waiting at the dock for a boat to go to the island. Margot starts smoking, but Tyler tells her not to because it ruins her taste buds. She asks why the boat is so small and he says that there are only 12 guests, then mentions that they make a profit by charging $1,250 a head. Soon after the rest of the quests arrive three finance brothers who are rowdy, all bragging about their expertise on cryptocurrency. Lillian Bloom, Janet McTeer, a food critic who is accompanied by her husband, Ted, Paul Adelstein. Regulars of the restaurant, and Judith Wright and her husband Richard, Reed Birney. And a movie star, John Leguizamo, and his assistant, Felicity, Amy Colello. Once on board they are given a sample appetizer. Tyler shows off his knowledge of food. When they arrive at the island, they are greeted by the restaurant captain, Elsa Hong Chow. She mistakes Margot for another person because Tyler forgot to mention that she wasn't the one who signed up in the first place and brought Margot instead. This unnerves Elsa. The quests are then given a tour of the island. First showing the local beach to let them know that they are using fresh ingredients. After they are shown a smokehouse where dairy cow meat is said to be aged for 152 days. One of the finance brothers jokes around about the meat. Then they are shown the barracks where all the staff live, with bunk beds like military barracks. Elsa explains that the staff are like a family with a common mission, to run the finest restaurant in the world. They finally arrive at the restaurant and find that Anne and Richard are already seated, with a sad old woman sitting in the corner drinking wine. Then suddenly Chef Slowick, Ralph Fiennes, shows up in the kitchen. Looking at all the dishes that are being prepared, Elsa goes up to the chef and have a mysterious conversation. Margot turns around and finds the chef staring back at her. All waiters start serving amuse-bouche and the guests start eating, also having personal conversations between themselves. Soon after the chef comes out and explains to them the next course and that they shouldn't just simply eat their dishes, but to actually taste the food. Servers start to bring out the next course called the island. Tyler gets so moved by the chef's speech, he starts bursting into tears. After finishing their meal, the chef comes out and slaps his hands. Then gives a speech about how bread has been around for 12,000 years and is usually common among the poor. He then talks about how nobody is getting any bread tonight because the group are no commoners. Instead, everyone gets a plate of condiments. Everyone starts laughing about it. Lillian Bloom laughs, then complains that the emulsion in one of the sauces has broken. She continues to talk about how she makes her own bread and yeast. They are interrupted when Elsa brings a large container of broken emulsion that Lillian complained about. Then the finance brothers call over Elsa. They complain about the dish and they want bread instead. Elsa says no to them. One of the finance brothers gets offended and tells her she is dismissed. Elsa leans in and whispers to one of them in their ear, freaking him out. The chef comes over and she asks Margot why she doesn't eat. She explains that she doesn't want to eat the dish and mocks the chef. He half smiles and walks away. Margot looks back at Richard, who is familiar to her, and points out to Richard that Margot looks like her daughter. The chef comes back out and slaps his hands again and tells them the upcoming course is called Memory. He points to an old woman explaining that is his mother and then proceeds on telling a story about how he protected his mother by choking his father with some phone cord, wishing he had stabbed his throat that night instead. The servers bring out the next course, giving each guest a small chicken thigh with tiny pincers sticking out and a plate adorned with a tightly coiled telephone cord and a bowl of tortillas. All tortillas have pictures on them of all the guests' personal photos and illegal documents. Margot gets offended and tries to send them back, but Tyler snaps at her for doing so and should be happy in the first place for just coming through the door in the first place. Margot then gets up and starts heading towards the bathroom. In the women's room, Margot cracks open a window staring out on the lawn. She sees a pair of angel wings are being prepared. The chef enters the bathroom and asks Margot what she's doing there. and keeps repeating the question of who she is. Margot is dumbfounded, then leaves the bathroom. On her way back to the table, she notices some servers roll a tarp down the middle of the floor, decorated with baskets and covered with sea fennel and edible flowers for the next course. The chef slaps his hands again and starts to explain the next course, but gets interrupted by one of the finance brothers. Then gets told to wait after his explanation. The chef continues and brings out his sous chef Jeremy, who created his next dish, called the mess. The chef goes on about how Jeremy wants to be like him and take his position but will never happen. The chef then tells the group, "Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth course." Jeremy removes the gun from his waistband and blows out his brains in front of everyone. Everyone starts screaming and panicking. Lillian Bloom in denial explains to everyone that it is staged and part of the chef's craft. Tyler, unfazed of the situation, tries the next dish. Richard is angry and gets up to leave. In the struggle, Elsa gets one of the servers to cut off Richard's left ring finger. Then Elsa tells the guests to get back to their seats. Lillian Bloom, still in denial, is convinced this is a stunt for her benefit, which is why he texted her and invited her personally. Her husband agrees it's performance art, both trying to convince themselves it's not really happening. The movie star approaches the finance brothers and try to come up with a plan on escaping. One of the finance brothers panics and picks up a chair, trying to break a window out of frustration, and fails. The chef comes out and slaps his hands again. Then asks the guests if they have any questions. The movie star asks why this is happening. And then the chef explains they were singled out and some of them are just spectators in his restaurant. One of the finance brothers interjects saying that this is not his restaurant and that Doug Verrick is the owner. We are then shown through a glass window overlooking the lawn. Light is cast on the man, Doug Verwick, wearing angel wings we saw earlier. The chef states that Doug questioned his menu, asked for replacements, and used him to print information on tortillas for tech boys. Doug is then slowly dropped into the ocean and drowned. The group is then taken outside for the next course. The chef explains that everyone is dying tonight and then introduces them to sous chef Catherine, who presents the next dish. Catherine tells the customers the story behind the dish and that she is not treated as an equal, and that she is better than all the male cooks. In the next course, called humiliation, she shows what her true humiliation looks like. Catherine picks up a small paring knife and stabs Chef Slowick in the thigh. Then they hug. The group are then told that the man have a 45-second head start to try to escape the island. One of the finance brothers immediately starts running. Others soon follow. Unfortunately, the women are returned to the restaurant during the chase. At 45 seconds, all male servers run into the woods to try and find them. And talks to Margot, who is known to have been hired for sex by Anne's husband. Catherine then tells the women that everyone dying tonight was her plan. Meanwhile, outside, all the male guests are caught by the servers and beaten. Ted is the last man found, hiding in the smokehouse instead of running through the woods, and receives an additional dish as a reward. Once the men return, the chef calls out Tyler and have him tell everyone that he knew that everyone was dying tonight and brought Margot, knowing that she will die because he needs a +1. Margot, out of anger, jumps across the table and punches Tyler. The chef then points out how Tyler has been sending him letters, explaining how much he loves Hawthorne and how much of a good cook he is himself. He is then accompanied into the kitchen to demonstrate his skills. After finishing, Tyler puts down the plate and the chef tries it, only to point out how awful it is. Tyler is embarrassed. The chef whispers into his ear, then heads back to the chef's office. The chef says he has another delicious course on the menu and needs to prepare dessert. However, Elsa has been negligent and forgot to assign someone to bring a barrel, and that's supposed to be in the corner. He tells Margot she will go to the smokehouse to fetch the barrel. Margot receives the keys to the smokehouse. On her way, she finds Tyler dead by a noose in the chef's office. Margot walks out onto the lawn and into the smokehouse. She soon finds the barrel, but she grabs a sharpening knife first. She sees the chef's cottage while heading back. Margot sneaks into the chef's cottage, not knowing that she is being watched by Elsa. When Margot enters the chef's cottage, she finds another silver door that appears to be locked. Elsa appears right behind her, telling Margot that she looks after the customers while the chef is in charge of the menu and Margot has been making her job difficult. They have a big brawl around the cottage using a knife that Margot looted. In the struggle, Elsa tells Margot that she didn't fail to move the barrel because the chef never asked for it. At the end, Elsa gets stabbed. Margot takes the key from Elsa, enters the silver room, finds a secret room piled with cookbooks and pictures of the chef throughout his career, and a photo of him flipping burgers at a local restaurant, which seems to be the last time he's ever smiled. Margot then notices a radio on the shelf and calls the Coast Guard. Soon after, Margot walks into the restaurant with the barrel. Soon the Coast Guard arrives at the restaurant. The chef praises Margot for finding the radio and orders the staff to clear the dining room. The staff work to cover up everything that happened that night and clean up all faces to hide their injuries. Then tells everyone not to mention anything because it only leads to the death of innocent people. The Coast Guard enters and tells everyone that there was a distress call on the radio about the restaurant. The chef denies this and no one in the room speaks up. The Coast Guard asks if anyone called 911 on shortwave, but Margot does not answer. He recognizes the movie star and says he's a fan. The chef asks him if he wants an autograph. The movie star gets a pen and paper and writes for the Coast Guard. The officer faces the exit, seeing the note that says help. Then turns around and points his gun at the chef. The guests start cheering and asking for help. The Coast Guard points the gun, but points it at Margot, more specifically, at the candles on Margot's table that the chef extinguished. The Coast Guard reveals himself to be one of them and the chef tells Margot that she is now an eater, a taker like everyone else. The guests is now told they're getting their final course. While the cooks are preparing the next course, Margot then suddenly stands up and shouts that she doesn't like the chef's food. And she wants to send it back. She points out the food wasn't made with love. The chef calls it ridiculous because love is the most important ingredient in all his food. Margot tells him that even his hot dishes were cold, there's no personality, only concepts. That as a chef, his one purpose is to serve people food they will like. And he failed her and he left her hungry. He asks what she wants and she tells him a traditional cheeseburger. The chef promises to make the best cheeseburger she's ever had. While the chef is cooking in the kitchen preparing Margot's cheeseburger, he starts smiling and looks to actually enjoy what he is doing. After he finishes, he comes out and presents it to Margot. She takes a bite. She agrees it's best cheeseburger she has ever eaten. But then explains her eyes were bigger than her stomach and wants the rest to go. The chef hesitates at first, then arranges for her to get a to-go bag. He thanks Margot for dining at Hawthorne. She puts $10 on the table and heads out to leave. She is also given a gift bag with the menu inside as a memento to remember the night. And Margot is free to go. After she leaves, everyone gets their bill before dessert is served. Everyone pays their bills as normal. Chef explains a tip is included as the chef tells everyone it's a tip system. The cooks start pouring chocolate and graham crackers around. Then each guest is given a coat of marshmallows. The chef tells them that their final course is a s'more, a traditional campfire favorite. In a crazy trance, the chef tells them that they need to be cleansed by the flames. He then grabs a piece of coal from the oven and stands in the middle of the dining room, telling his staff that he loves them before he drops the coal and setting the restaurant on fire. Outside, Margot gets to the Coast Guard boat, then starts fleeing. Everything is on fire at Hawthorne, and all employees and guests are dead. On the boat, Margot opens her takeaway bag. She then pulls out the cheeseburger from earlier and starts eating it. The movie ends with her reaching for the menu they had that night and wipes her face with it, while watching the flames. The end.